Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard, and we are here to break down the Oklahoma Sooners 33-3 win over the Kent State Golden Flashes. And joining me today, as always, we have Jamison Maxwell, Ty Lee, and we're brought to you, as always, by DraftKings Sportsbook and Raycon. So we shout out to our fine sponsors on our network, TPPN. So anyways, let's get down to it. Obviously, a bit of a rough start. The Sooners only at halftime. It was only 7-3. OU's only score coming on the backs of a last-second mad scramble drive to score to take the lead. And we're going to break down performances for sure, but it was kind of a tale of two halves. Jamison, what in the hell was wrong with OU in that first half?
I feel like almost everything was on the offensive side of the ball because obviously that's what we want to talk about. The defense did great. We'll talk about them later in the pod, but the offense I don't think there was a lot going right in that first half and even throughout the game. Something we mentioned last week, Dylan Gabriel is holding on to the ball for too long. It seems like his reads are a little delayed. We might have gave him the benefit of the doubt last week because, it's his first football game in a while since he's played coming off injury. But it's happening again. So I understand this is Kent State and UTEP, but we've got bigger opponents here coming up in the next couple weeks that we need to be doing better. Offensive line, also just miserable. Interior, the guards and centers, not to our standards. I thought the tackles played decent, but a lot of things where our run game was embarrassing because of a lot of missed blocks. And we couldn't get anything when we were playing from behind on second and third down.
I'm thinking we need Wanya Morris back for sure. I feel you on that O-line.
See, that's a tackle. Like Tyler Guyton and Anton Harrison, like they weren't the best, but they played pretty decently okay on Saturday. Now, McCabe Mature, like this is a guy that we were hyping up and we were hearing all these great reports coming out of practice in the spring and the summer. And now it just seems like he's not playing like that guy that we thought he was. And then Andrew Rames got some, he's got to do a lot better than what he's doing. It seems like he's missing a lot of blocks. Chris Murray has been average, but in terms of interior defensive line playing against the opponents that we've had, I should be expecting a lot more dominance. And I didn't see much where I looked at the, just a run or, something to the middle of the field where I go, wow, the offensive line just dominated. I didn't say that once throughout the past two games.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair critique for sure. Ty, what did you see in that first half? What the hell was going on there?
Well, we didn't establish the run. We couldn't establish the run. And that was something that we've talked about with this offense is a crucial thing, that old school style of establish the run as the first thing that you do, and then you run until they open up the opportunity to throw. And the stats say we threw pretty well. We had some big plays, but really we couldn't establish the run for a couple of reasons, like Jamison mentioned, and you saw those effects as they roll on. Dylan Gabriel, I'm sure we're going to dive deeper into it. Really just my quick analysis on that, and this is sort of a maybe an assumption by me, but it seems like he does good when he doesn't have to make decisions. When you put him in an RPO type situation, even when he hands it off, it just seems slow. And I think that was contributing to the run because it seemed like we ran a little bit better when it was just boom and go. And then the same thing when it came to passing, I feel like, and I'm not saying he's not a good decision maker. It seemed like he was struggling with having to make decisions in this game, because even though he threw well, his stats, I think, are much better than what it looked like. When I went back and looked at his stats, I was like, wow, okay, that looks a lot better than what I felt like when I was watching it. But even the pass plays, when we ran that hurry-up offense with the last 2 minutes in the first half that led to our opening touchdown of the game, he was excellent. And those were the type of passing plays where you get really one look, and he was passing to his first look on that designed, or on a lot of those designed quick pass plays. So it really seemed like the more decision-making that Dylan Gabriel had to make during the game or during the play, it seemed like he really struggled with that. And hopefully that's because he's still new and building chemistry and learning, his receivers. Because we saw a lot of different receivers. I'm sure we'll get into that as well, but a lot of different receivers out there.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely took some time for him to get rolling. and I'm with you. It looked off in that first half. Jamison, in today's offensive coordinator press conferences, Jeff Lebby actually kind of put the blame on himself. He said he didn't dial up enough passing plays, and that was one of the reasons why the offense struggled so much in the first half. Do you buy it?
I mean, what is the coordinator going to say? My players sucked. Like, obviously, he's going to put his name in, like, take the hit. It wasn't his fault. There might have been some play calling that might have been a little too conservative. And it seems like like I said earlier, we were playing from behind a lot where we'd have a first down. I don't know, playing, we'd run the ball very frequently. I'd be curious to see what the stats were of like run versus pass on first down. And our offensive linemen want to make a good block, or noticed a lot. And what the people I was sitting next to were talking about too is Kent State safety. They would play too high safety, but as soon, almost every single down, those safeties would be coming up fast to defend the run. And even if the running backs weren't, breaking the first tackle of those guys that were missed by the offensive linemen, the safety in the second level of the defense was waiting for them too. It didn't really allow for too much breakaways other than the Marcus Major and Eric Gray runs. Marcus Major touchdown, the Eric Gray 40+ yard run. It's just tough. It seemed a little monotonous. So I'll give it to Lebby on that. He did seem to find himself in a pattern a little bit much more, but our players got to play better, and it starts with the big guys.
Yeah, for sure. Ty, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the coordinators, one of the notes that I had, and this is something that I didn't go back and rewatch the entire game, but I, watched it in person. I was lucky enough, just by happenstance, happened to sit right by Bobby and his wife, my wife and I.
That was a fun time.
Which was a fun time, yeah. But I got to sit up really high and watch the game from that point of view, and from there, it really seemed like our playbook wasn't that extensive. It seemed like we had not a whole lot of plays, or not a whole lot of variety. We ran 36 times past 28, but it really seemed like out of those 36 runs and 28 pass attempts, it seemed like there was maybe 10 plays that were called the entire time. I know there was a lot more than that. So I definitely had some questions about the depth of our playbook if we're talking about offensive coordinator things. And, you always make the argument, it's Kent State. We won by 30 points. Can't forget that. So we won by 30 points, held them to 3. So it wasn't as bad as I think a lot of people think when you just look at the numbers. But are we holding stuff back from the playbook, or have we really just not established a whole lot? Or maybe we have a whole lot of plays established and things just aren't clicking yet. I feel like that was the story of the first half is it looked like we were doing a lot of things right, and it's just nothing was clicking.
Yeah. I think, Ty, I really want to emphasize this with are we not opening our playbook up enough? If you listen to our older podcasts, and something you talked a lot, Ty, is having the run open up the pass for this offense, and spreading out the wide receivers wide and then just jamming them over and over and over on the run to where it's going to put Marvin Mims on an island and hopefully get single coverage and let him go make a play. The problem is, if you're looking at a root cause analysis of this, I can't open up the pass if the run isn't getting opened up. And why isn't the run getting opened up? We have the talent. I think Marcus Major showed a lot, and I'm very curious to see what y'all think about. Is he have an argument now to be RB1 over Eric Gray, or are we just overreacting 2 games in? Because that is a huge talking point in the Oklahoma community right now. But I think it's just our interior defensive line. It just got to step up. Now, if you're talking about replacements, I mean, is McKay Matura going to get benched for a guy like Savion Byrd? We saw Savion Byrd play a little bit in near the end of the game, and he looked good for my eyes whenever I noticed him get subbed in. We see it all the time with Bill Beatenbow. Even whenever we think that we have our offensive line rotation, our best 5 guys at the beginning of the season, how often do we fall in love with these guys at the beginning of the season? Then they disappoint us, and then Bill Beatenbow eventually finds his 5 guys, and we stick at it through the rest, second half of the season. I would not be surprised at all coming into this Nebraska game that a guy like Savion Byrd comes in earlier than the 4th or even late 3rd quarter, maybe even see more of him in the first couple of drives.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It's a yearly thing. The line always has, like you said, that one guy who we were big on, in the offseason, just never quite materialized as well. So I wouldn't be stunned to see it. I wouldn't say that Beatenbow has a short leash, but he, has been known to mix it up a bit, especially if it's not working, which it kind of isn't here. So I could definitely see that for Nebraska coming up for sure. But one note I wanted to make on that first half before we moved on and started talking about the good things that happened. The defense, they held Kent State to 3. At no point was the defense like I would call them like flat out bad. This was the lowest amount of points allowed by an Oklahoma defense against an FBS school since 2017. So this was a really good, really solid defensive performance that we have not seen in Norman against, an FBS team, a team with a pulse in quite a while.
That team was Kansas. Let me just make a programming note on that as well.
Yeah. 2017 Kansas. So, yeah, that's before Kansas learned how to just run all over Lincoln Riley, I guess, but I don't know. So yeah, this defense didn't play bad, but at the same time, they let Colin Schlee throw for 131 yards, 11 for 19 with an 88.7 QBR, which, a decent outing for, a Kent State quarterback. So
is it
Jamison? Hold on. A decent outing for a Kent State quarterback.
Kent State has had a good line of quarterbacks pass. I mean, feel like Colin Schlee has at least a little bit of, respect in terms of deep college football reputation because he's shown some things that he was decent. We talked about Crum last year. They took him to the conference championship. I think this Kent State team, we have to give our credit. Like Kent State, they aren't the best team on defense. They are very vulnerable. Even though they shut us down in the first half and the fourth quarter. But their passing attack is something that was definitely to be made as a positive point for them. We saw it during the game. Dante Cephas, their wide receiver, you could clearly see him as he was playing and catching those routes. That this guy was not your ordinary non-power 5 wide receiver. He looked like a guy who's going to be getting drafted in the future. So to be honest with you, we can talk about, we didn't really get any interceptions and all this stuff. We didn't, we probably shouldn't have had him be so accurate, but I was very, very happy with our secondary and our defense as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely prevented, really big plays and obviously kept them out of the end zone. So that's some good stuff for sure. Ty, your thoughts on our defense against Kent State's offense, I suppose.
Yeah, starting with Schlee, and then a note that I wanted to make sort of earlier, it just didn't come up organically, is I do want to give credit to Kent State. Although they lost by 30 and only scored 3, I think it can be said by anyone that looks at the game objectively that they prepared very well. It was, some by chance. We did have an interception on their backup a little bit later, and then we also forced a turnover that was most likely going to result in at least another field goal, that fumble recovery in the second half. But they prepared very, very well. And I think when it comes to Schlee, their quarterback, really his threat wasn't in the air. He was able to pass good enough, but his scramble ability it looked too good for what it should have been against this defense. I try to pull up his stats real quick, but
he had 55 yards.
He was their leading rusher.
I don't know how many sacks that we got, though.
But
see, that's what I'll pull it up. I'll get the sack.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say was looking at our defense, I would summarize it in the statement that I think we looked really, really, really good, like really good 60% of the time. But then the other 40%, none of it was too bad, but it was just like infuriating things. Like there was a string, I think it was through the second quarter, people who watched the game sort of more intently or maybe noticed this might be able to correct me on this, but I'm sure you guys will. There was a string of like during the second quarter where it was like 10 offensive plays by Kent State in a row on a couple different drives where we were just absolutely bamboozled by their deceptions. Like guys, our play call absolutely blew up their play call. And then we'd have multiple linebackers and D linemen in their backfield as the play is unfolding. And all of our dudes would just go after the wrong guy. And we would constantly, whether it was the quarterback keeping it or the running back keeping it, it was just over and over and over. You go rewatch the game. It's like, what in the world is happening? Because we were just had perfect play calls, perfect execution, and then just fooled by the deception. And that there was a big string of that. It happened a lot. I would say it probably happened 10 times in the game as a whole, but there was a string where it really happened, just back to back to back. And I was sitting there going, "What? How do we keep getting fooled by this, Bobby?" I don't know if you guys were yelling that, but the people sort of to the left of you guys were saying the same thing. Like, how every single time? Obviously, it's a lot more difficult when you're down there on the field, but it was like it wasn't all the same guy either. It was just all sorts of different OU defensive players. Their deception. I don't know. Maybe they're just really, really good at deception. Maybe credit.
It's like
to them,
but it's like that option kind of situation.
Yeah,
But
but
people
option.
would act like they were taking the snap before. I was getting really fed
Yeah,
up. with
that
I was
wasn't.
like,
I don't think that was
fast.
fooling us. Yeah, I don't think that was
Fast.
fooling us because every time
That
they
was
were
just
doing
pissing
that,
me
our
off.
defense just didn't seem very concerned. But it was just all these like the play action and these RPOs and stuff. Just our defense would go back, and you know what? Maybe credit to their quarterback Schlee for reading it because maybe thinking about it now, maybe our guys were just blowing up the play. And we're just locked onto one dude and like, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. And then their quarterback was just able to read it pretty well. I don't know, but that certainly stuck out to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to say also, like to your point, you said about Kent State's preparation and, they looked like a focused, really prep team. Well, they stayed in Tulsa the entire week. So essentially they had an entire week to just focus on this football game. So it was clear they came motivated, they came focused, they came prepared because, they, weren't at school, no distractions, they were stuck at, practicing at, I think Tulsa Union the whole week. So, as anyone can really attest to, when you're on the road like that, you don't have the same distractions you would at home. Your friends aren't there, other than your friends on the team, but everyone's kind of focused towards that one common goal. I think that's something that really benefited them this week.
Are you saying that they weren't focused on their online courses that they obviously were taking, Bobby?
Oh yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
Man, they definitely were all keyed in on those on Canva and on all of their online
Canvas.
Canvas.
This man's been out the game. D2L and Canvas.
Canvas. No, Canva is the graphics software that I use for a lot of stuff, and it's currently up right now. So I was staring at it. It's Canvas. Yeah, I've been out the game too long.
So let's do our defensive deep dive and then give out a game ball.
Yeah, let's start talking about good things because we did pretty good.
Yeah, I really think just by the eye test. Now I don't know if this is going to be my game ball, but by the eye test, Danny Stutzman looked so dominant. There were so many plays where I was like, wow, look at Danny Stutzman go. He was all over the field, 12 tackles, 4 for tackles for losses. He seemed like an extreme difference maker out there. I, for one, thought, Danny Stutzman's on his way to becoming, a high-end producer on a defense. Now I'm getting to the point where, am I about to make an argument that Danny Stutzman's our best defender? I mean, honestly, I feel like there's a really good argument to be made there.
He is at least our best. He feels like our best linebacker we've had since what? Kenneth Murray, Curtis Bolton.
That's
that's
I think
a
good argument.
Kenneth Murray is a fair, obviously different style, but in terms of impact,
I'm a Chargers fan, so I just have a lot to say about Kenneth Murray.
Hey, yeah, you just got to go into OU mode here. Remember the good times, Jamison. Remember the good times. Sorry, Ty, we were saying something.
Yeah, no, my light went out. Yeah, I would say his impact obviously plays a little bit of has a different impact, but in terms of the gravity of his impact, I would say probably pretty similar. I would make the argument that the best defender on our defense is Billy Bowman. I think that there was, if you go back and separate not out individual players, but if you go out and separate position groups, I think you can maybe make an argument that the secondary had the best game defensively out of everyone else, because there was, I pulled up the stats just to double check this because I sort of had an intuitive idea. Kent State had 4 people that had long rushes of over 10 yards, which is a lot. And those were, I think, all but one stopped by the secondary coming in and having to play run defense. And then the Kent State obviously was able to pass around a little bit, but our secondary was sort of hampered by the play calling at the time. That's the setups where you're going into a zone or something else, and you're in a sort of a protection. But I think the secondary out of all the groups had one of the better games. And then Billy Bowman really heads up play and forcing that fumble out where he played it is super, super smartly, like NFL level, where you go in and your primary focus is get to the guy and stop his forward progress. And he went in, made the hit, wrapped him up, and the guy was still moving forward a little bit, but another, I forget his name now, but another defender came in and made contact as well. And Bowman just continuing through the continuum of actions and went for the strip and got it there. It was super, super heads up play and done correctly, not done where you just blow off everything else and go for the pick or go for the strip and then get exposed on the tackle. So super heads up play from an OU secondary. And I just want to champion the secondary's performance and Bowman in particular, because he was, I think, one tackle behind Stutzman on the overall stats, although Stutzman had 9 solo tackles that cannot be matched.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one thing that the secondary did a really good job with. And, while they didn't have as many solo tackles as Stutzman, 11 total tackles for Broyles, 11 total tackles for Bowman as well. They were swarming. This defense, did a good job of really attacking the ball, really, making. I love a defense that kind of moves together like a school of fish, just kind of swarms in, doesn't just kind of sit back and let one guy take them down. I feel like they did a really good job of that this game. And it was really, really exemplary with Justin Broyles, but primarily Billy Bowman. I thought he had a hell of a game. And, this game ball is tricky because for me personally, because I was thinking Bowman before, but now I'm thinking about Stutzman, and I really think both of them, this is as much of a split as it gets. And the D line was pretty damn good too. They got a lot of tackles for loss as well. I believe 3 total sacks, which is a little bit lower than last week, but overall,
they were pressuring.
Really good performance. Yeah,
they were pressuring. They were changing things very quickly. I think Reggie Grimes had another good game just by the eye test. Ethan Downs got in a half snack. I like that. A half sack. But Isaiah Coe, like whenever he makes a play, man, he just looks so dominant. That man is so big. And whenever he went out there on that first drive and let that, he got the QB to roll out, and I think Reggie Grimes finished it up on the sack. That's scary. A guy his size who can make that kind of push. If we have Ethan Downs and Reggie Grimes performing at a high level on the outside, that's big time. But like you said, Bobby, going in, unless y'all have anything else to say about this game in terms of defense, I feel like we kind of talked about it. I have to pick between, my head and like my eyes here. I guess they're kind of very interconnected. Here I go again. But like my head is telling me it's Billy Bowman because he made the turnover, which was a pivotal thing in every single game, the only turnover that we had. But I just got to go with my eyes because Danny Stutzman just looked so much like a difference maker. He passed every single eye test. And I'm just ready to say, even though Ty thinks Billy Bowman's our best defender, I think Danny Stutzman's our biggest difference maker and best defender right now.
Yeah, we had a garbage time interception.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't counting that one because it's the backup quarterback. Might be it.
Fair enough. Ty, what do you think? Who's your game ball?
Yeah, so I have the inverse of Jamison's rationale. I think if I go with my eyes, it's Danny Stutzman because he was the flashy one. He was out there getting the big flashy stuff, and if you look at just the numbers. Empirically, you have to say that he did the best. But I think if I think about it with my head and consider in, the positions and the natural sort of distribution of tackles and sacks and things based on your position group and really think about the game performance, I have to go with Bowman. So I'm going to give mine to Bowman.
Yeah, and this is tricky because it's really. They both deserve it, and I can't give a game ball to both of them. So I'm going to give mine to Delaire and Turner Yell. No, but really though, that joke probably needs to die. I'm going to give it to Stutzman just because of that visceral impact he had on that defense. There's nothing better than having a linebacker who just feels like he's all over the field, who feels like he's inevitable, who feels like he's just completely. It is so hard to will a game or bend a game to your will on defense. And Stutzman being one of those players who could do that, it would be massive for this defense. Not just this year, but going forward. Incredibly exciting performance. I know it's just Kent State, but he was the guy that, got me out of my seat more than anyone. Bowman missed it by this much, but yeah, give me Darius Stutzman there.
Yeah, it's nothing against Bowman. Obviously played very good game. It's just between
Yeah.
the two. But let's talk about offense, guys. Obviously we kind of already hit on kind of the slowness and what we think needs to happen moving forward. I would love to see just more rotations in terms of offensive line from Bill Bedenbaugh, which is a guy that likes to do that thing. But the positives of it, which I feel like really need to be had. Marvin Mims, we talk about like, oh, is he just an auxiliary guy that's going to get like 2 or 3 catches one game, then the next game go off and only catch deep balls and be a stat patter? This dude played 25 snaps out of 66 on Saturday, and he put up the stat line that he did. That is nuts. 7 catches, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns on 25 snaps. I mean, is there even going to be a conversation for game ball moving forward with this game?
Yes.
Oh, really, Ty? What do you think?
No, but I do want to say, yeah, I was going to say Marvin Mims had a absolute game. Just ridiculous. Like, he's 163 yards, averaging 23.3 yards with 2 touchdowns and a long of almost 60 yards. And he was out there putting up big plays. I think his impact is exclamation pointed by, that was terrible. I should have used like accentuated or something, but a big exclamation point on his stat line is the fact that he was out there performing at the level that he was performing the entire time. When we talk about this OU team being kind of flat, being kind of the very first drive, he went out there and I think it was the first drive, went out there and popped off. It was at least over 15 yards, probably over 20 yards, just a massive reception and moved us down the field and had a ton of momentum. He was out there performing the entire time he was out there, and you got to give him credit for that, for sure. I have some more to say on the offense, but
our first drive was run, sack, I believe, but the second drive,
it would have been the second.
When Marvin Mims got a like a 30-something yard catch over the middle.
Yeah. No, that sounds about right. And here's the thing about Mims is he's been a guy who we've all talked about it a lot, who we think is like wide receiver 1. This guy could be like the Litnikoff level, really light it up. And in previous years, last year in particular, we hadn't really seen that outside of, a couple glimpses. The Texas game, for example. I feel like he's very clearly that guy. He's putting up the numbers, or the past 2 games he's put up those numbers. And this was just the way the Levy offense has utilized him. It has done nothing but give you encouragement and feeling that this guy is going to light folks up, and that hype that we've given him almost annually since is really just going to, shine through on a weekly basis. So, yeah, if we're talking about game ball, I don't even know if we need to talk too much about it, but we definitely need to talk more about the offense for sure. So we kind of talked about Gabriel a little shaky, but obviously came through quite a bit in the second. I don't think we need to talk too much about it, but we definitely need to mention it. Jamison, Gabriel getting back on track, figuring it out. How would you grade his performance? How did you feel about it? Did you leave the Kent State game feeling better or worse about Dylan Gabriel as the quarterback of the Oklahoma Sooners?
It was about the exact same thing for me. I think it was about a B. I've talked about this on our terms of grading. This is kind of how I look in terms of letter grades. OU expects A every single time. We are an A 4.0 student expectant. We might not have a 4.0, but we feel like we should be getting A's in every single class, and every single player should be getting an A, and especially at the quarterback. That's our bread and butter class. So I know times have changed, but there's some things that I'm worried about. I told you, like, it seems like his decision-making is slow. And the offensive line isn't helping him too much. There were a couple plays where he should have thrown the ball away and he got hit with a sack. I think he got sacked 4 times, honestly. And when we're playing Kent State's defense, Blake said on our weekend spread, what Michael Penix did to them, this should not be Dylan Gabriel only getting 3 touchdowns and getting sacked 4 times. I think that this is the type of game where Dylan Gabriel should be getting 5 touchdowns and being subbed out in the third quarter, which obviously wasn't the case. We got kind of in a hole, and it seems like, our offensive line and run game wasn't bailing him out. Maybe it put him in kind of a bad position. But for what I saw, I thought that Kent State was daring us to throw. And if we would have thrown the ball a lot more and stopped trying to play our game and scheme, we should have given what the defense was taking. I mean, I completely botched that. Take what the defense is giving us. And Dylan Gabriel, it just seems like he was doubting himself out there. Yeah, I think that I think Bobby continues to hit mute, and let's see if he's got an excuse for this time. Bobby, what do you got?
I was actually looking at something else to pull up for the next podcast. So
never. Hey, as Brent Venables would
never
that excuse. How dare you? Oh my God, Schmitty would destroy you. You were looking forward to next podcast rather than the current podcast we have at hand.
Poison.
Oh my God, we're gonna lose to Nebraska this week with that kind of mindset. Looking forward to Bobby's K-State.
I know. Out here trying to add a video clip for the next podcast. I screwed up, guys. I'm sorry. The standard is the standard. I did not defend the standard there. But anyways, no, I'm with you. I feel like Gabriel's still growing into that role as being the guy at OU. I think that's kind of the case across the board with some places. You know, this team is still in its infancy in a way. You know, it still hasn't grown into being an Oklahoma team yet. A lot of these guys still haven't really. I mean, this was their second game for a lot of these players. You know, to wear an OU uniform. So I think Gabriel definitely has obviously a massive target on his back. This is a program that has just legendary history with the quarterback position, especially recently. And, you know, I imagine there's some pressure there, some pressure to go out and perform, and it's hard to rush chemistry, but I don't know. I feel like he got better by having this adversity, by bouncing back and doing a little bit. We'll see how he handles, you know, a probably raucous Nebraska crowd next week. But no, I think he still looked good. I think he got back on the saddle and you know, figured some stuff out. So
Kai, I need to hear now. I just can't wait any longer. Give me your take on Eric Gray versus Marcus Major. Who is the best running back in our running back stable?
Okay, so I need to work into it real quick. I have a very quick, very respectful, I want to say, note on Dylan Gabriel. He is you don't hear this a lot. You don't hear this term a lot in college. You hear it a lot in the pros. You don't hear it a lot in college. But I think Dylan Gabriel is a system quarterback. He's very good. He is very good. We have an Oklahoma quarterback expectation and standard, even going back our entire lifetimes, just the ridiculous percentage of OU quarterbacks that have won the Heisman in our lifetimes is crazy. So we have a certain expectation, but I think he's a system quarterback and he's not used to the system that he's in yet. And we're seeing that. I think he will continue to improve as the season goes on, but don't expect a Heisman ceremony or Heisman winning quarterback out of him. I think unfortunately he's not that guy. He cannot rush whatsoever. So that's certainly a note. When it comes to the running game, I think I've been known to make this take when it comes to the receivers about how sometimes it's very, very good to be WR2 on a college team, and that has to do with defensive matchups and the depth of skill on a lot of secondary rosters at the college level. But I think that Marvin Mims is a receiver. I don't know why I said his name.
I was thinking, he's about to make a really good point. I'm going to clip this for our podcast.
No,
Marvin Mims is a receiver.
I've fumbled it. That is a very good point. That's an I don't know what it is. You cannot refute the point that Marvin Mims is in fact a receiver. Fair and balanced, just objective journalism.
This man's spitting.
Yeah, but Marcus Major is, I think, pretty firmly our running back too. I think really, if you really want to dig into it, there's maybe an argument that Marvin Mims is a receiver. Goodness gracious!
What? Yes, he is.
Eric Gray is the name.
You know what? You know what? Let's just expose College Game Day too. You heard it from the Schooner Pod first. An SEC team will win the SEC championship this year, in spite of what College Game Day analysts will tell you. But no, so I think Marcus Major, people are saying, oh, is he running back number 1. I think he's competing for running back number 2 right now. Javonte Barnes got a lot of play time, more carries than Major did. I think Major majorly benefited from the play calls that he got and the matchups, which are sort of out of your control, from Kent State. I think Kent State prepared very well for us. I think they watched a lot of tape on us. I think they watched a lot of tape on Jeff Lebby offenses. And I think when they saw Major come in, knowing that he wasn't our primary running back and knowing that they had our run game pretty much shut down, he maybe had a little bit more advantageous defensive setups or defensive game plans when he got the snap. How much that factored into it, I don't know. He had an absolute ball game, but I think he had easier circumstances. I think if you reversed his role with Eric Gray, you would see a pretty similar, if not better, performance from Gray. If Gray is the guy that the defense is sort of sleeping on, to use the terms that kids use, or he's the guy that the defense is reading, okay, this is their second guy, he's probably going to block, let's focus on the receivers, it looks like they're lined up for a pass or something here. But he had a tremendous game. I think he's on track. He's definitely already having the best season that he's ever had at OU, and with a touchdown. So we got to give him credit. But I don't think that the is he running back number 1 arguments online hold any merit. And I don't think there's anywhere close to any sort of serious talk or thoughts like that within the locker room and within the coaching staff. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, Jamison. You probably wanted to hear something a little more.
No,
Homer take, but I think Gray is the firm number 1, and I think Gray had the defense swarming him whenever they saw him out there. But it's very difficult to be the pack mule that the load is thrown on versus the guy that gets to go out there and do the trickier stuff or the fancier stuff, or maybe face we'll say, keeping with the pack mule analogy, maybe he's getting a lighter load. Eric Gray has carried the water jugs when they were full, and now that people have drank from the jugs and they're half full, they're getting passed off. So
yeah,
but also
I think
again,
you made a perfect point though, Ty. I really do. Sorry to cut you off there. I mean, I think that RB2 is always going to look better in terms of if you're trying to compare them 1 to 2, just based on the eye test. If assuming RB1 and RB2 are the exact same skill level, exact same players, RB2 should be doing better if they get the same amount of volume. You're right. And I do also agree that I don't think that they're going to bat an eye about Eric Gray being RB1. I think Lebby said it in his press conference today whenever there was a question aimed at Marcus Major and his productivity. You can tell it was just the classic reporter, like kind of hinting rather than straight up asking a question about, is Marcus Major kind of playing better than Eric Gray? And Jeff Lebby went right around that question, almost kind of dodged it, and just started talking about Eric Gray and how he improved a lot from the first half to the second half. I think the coaching staff has a lot of confidence in him. But thinking about it, if the interior of the offensive line, if they're going to play like they have been, and they're giving up, our run blocking and our zones are not opening up to where our running backs can go up the free gap, Marcus Major is more elusive in breaking tackles than a guy like Eric Gray. Eric Gray's way better in space. There's no doubt about that. But if we continue to have poor blocking, I think Marcus Major is going to be more productive.
It's a matter. Yeah, I think that's really kind of the thing, is production versus RB1 versus RB2, because they both do different things. If the O-line is kind of crappy that week, then yeah, you probably want to run Major more. I think they both have a part to play in this. And I think kind of thinking of it as who starts, who's benched is kind of not the right way to think. And I know that's kind of not what you're saying, but I think both of these players are incredibly, incredibly important. But I mean, Jamison's right. I think it does kind of boil down to, the performance of that line. Can they figure that out? Because naturally a guy who can push through it is going to do better. That's I think what it boils down to the most. Ty, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, quick note that has to be mentioned, I think is a very telling stat. I think sometimes stats can be misleading, but I think this one is very telling. Gray had 10 carries, Major had 5, so twice as many carries. And Gray was averaging 7.1 yards to Major's 7.6. So while there is that is a little bit different, but but
he averaged 3
Gray
yards per
had,
carry, not counting the 44-yard run, and then
but
taking out Marcus Major's biggest
but
play.
he did have a
5.
big
Yeah,
explosive,
of course.
where he made
I'm just
someone miss. To his
I'm
to
just
his
saying
credit,
he had
that
9
was,
carries of a lot of poop before that. But obviously, you cannot discount the stats before that. I know we do that all the time, but I just had to make that point. Keep going.
No, I agree, but I was just going to say, when you look at the numbers, there is a numerical proof, so to speak, that it's much harder. We saw this with a lot of his lower yards. It's much harder to maintain a high average the more carries you get, because there are inevitably going to be those stop at the line or make contact behind the line stuff. So when you're getting twice as many carries, it's much harder to maintain that 7+ yards per carry stat.
That's
even
fair.
though it's it is swayed or biased a little bit by a big one, but
yeah. So I think that's all we have to really kind of break down when it comes to the running backs as well as the O-line. I think we covered both of those very well.
Does Theo Weiss deserve a game ball again, Ty?
No, but I did have a quick note, and it is quick, on the receivers. I think the receivers as a group are better than Dylan Gabriel. I don't know that a lot of people would argue with that. I think when you look at a lot of the times when you look at the receivers and the quarterback aren't meshing up arguments, a lot of the time it's we need to find receivers that mesh with the quarterback, or the receivers need to do a better job of getting to know the quarterback and what the quarterback needs to see to read you for the play, and a lot of stuff like that. I think the receivers are playing at a very high level, and I think we have a depth, a serious depth of receivers that can play at a high level. Mims is going off on another level, but Drake Stoops is in his excellent Drake Stoops form. I mean, 3 catches, one for just an absolutely electric touchdown. That was the very first touchdown that we really got to see the lights in action, which I'm sure we'll mention here in a second. But Drake Stoops, averaging 11 yards of reception on 3 receptions, just being a guy that's reliable, and a whole lot of other guys going out there from all sorts of different position groups, which speaks to our play calling. But yeah, the receivers, I think there is a fair argument for who is WR2. I think this game, looking at it in action and looking at the stats, I would argue that it's Drake Stoops. If you just looked at the stats, you could make a Theo Weiss argument as well. I think Theo Weiss got more snaps significantly than Drake Stoops. I don't know what that number is, but Stoops was not out there a lot. But he performed when he was out there compared to Weiss. I think Weiss was out there much more than Stoops. So I guess from a coaching angle, Weiss is WR2.
Yeah, and I'll say this: that Drake Stoops touchdown was probably his best. Very cool, very good touchdown. Maybe not situationally, but in terms of like skill and just kind of the will to get in there. Oh my gosh, incredible work from Drake Stoops. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, that wide receiving core as a whole, very, very good, very exciting stuff. So game balls, Marvin Mims, anyone else?
Yeah,
Marvin Drake Stoops. No, Stoops. Stoops.
Okay,
I gotta go Stoops. Because I'm a big Stoops guy, and like you said, that I was filming. I got that play on film on my story, which I thought was super cool. That sounds really, really lame to say now, but we didn't know how cool. We didn't know how cool the lights were going to be, because they were kind of underwhelming up to that point. So that was super, super cool. But super heads up. I mean, that was, I think, one of his best plays ever in an OU uniform. So
Stutzman, so we got some defense.
Yeah, we got some viewer comments if you just joined in. Yeah, we already did our defensive game balls. I think 2 out of 3 went with Stutzman for the defense.
Yeah, we were. Let's talk about the lights. Let's talk about the lights before we end this, because obviously that's one of the coolest parts to talk about with this. Let's write a pros and cons list. Every single thing that is that major, people are going to whine about. But the pros, obviously, they looked so cool. It just seemed like we have a different energy. I've been kind of wanting OU to have a little bit something different. Obviously, we have the Sooner Schooner that comes out after touchdowns, and that's kind of like our big thing. But like having kind of like an angle in terms of like visual production of our games, I kind of wanted something a little bit different, and this seems really, really cool. And the problem with it, though, is I feel like there's going to be people on TV that are going to start getting really angry, especially with this K-State being another night game, because whenever the lights immediately go off, the TV cameras have no idea who to shoot, because like the guy gets the touchdown and then everything goes dark on the TV camera. You cannot see anything on TV.
Yeah, you have to imagine they're just furious at that because
There's
you
no
know it's
doubt
not
about that.
exactly. I mean, I'm sure it looks kind of cool on TV, but it doesn't have remotely the same effect. Where I imagine it's just a little annoying if you're watching on TV, but in person, it was awesome. Some of the breaks, really cool. I think it really kept people engaged. I think it was you know, football games are great. Football games are big, but you know, stuff like that, improving that experience that makes it like I want to be there at that stadium to feel that energy, to feel what it's like whenever the lights are going and it's like it's a mini rave for timeouts. It's pretty exciting. I don't know. I very much liked it. I thought it was a jolt we needed. I feel like the music has stepped up as well. You know, I know they got a new DJ going. I think it's Garrett Ebersol, good dude. So you know, music stepped up from a perspective. I will say, get a better version of Oklahoma Breakdown. They played it in between third and fourth. It was better than Red Solo Cup, but I gotta say, Toby Keith has a trash version of that song. Not great. Don't think it worked. That's my piece on the lights and that and the breakdown.
And the one singular tweet from the Schooner Pod account, as is tradition, was only about I wanted Crazy Train. Where was Crazy Train? I needed more of it. I was very disappointed.
Finally killed it.
It's just a nostalgia thing. I needed it. I am a fan of trolling songs. Obviously,
we did it pregame. We did Crazy Train pregame. I'm like 99% sure we did. Like I know 10 minutes before you got in. Yeah, like 10 minutes before you guys came up.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. I was there about 15 minutes before, 20 minutes before kickoff.
I think it was. I think we played it around like 25. We played it pretty early, but I'm pretty certain we played it. So
yeah,
that makes me feel a little bit better. Good for them. I was gonna be very mad about losing Crazy Train.
Yeah, I think we're the only pro Crazy Train podcast on the internet when it comes to OU.
Really?
At least because everyone's like, get rid of it. It's garbage. I love it. Every time I hear that little all aboard, I'm like, I'm in. I'm pumped. Let's do this.
It's just
it throws me back to when I was a little baby boy hanging out. You know, yeah, it throws me back. I love the nostalgia. I don't care if it doesn't get the kids hype. I like it.
Ty wants more Mo Bamba.
So I did. Do we even play it? I don't think we did.
Ty's pro Bamba.
But I did have a note on the lights. Is one, I think someone mentioned this in the comments as well. It's not at the same level that Georgia and Alabama are. But you can't compare it to that. They have different stadium layouts that are more conducive to that sort of red out thing. Obviously, part of it is we just don't have the physical red LEDs in the big lights like Georgia does and like Bama do, but they also have a more complete upper deck stadium and a more complete, I don't know what you call it, like a ribbon screen or light that comes around. We only have, ones that are on the lateral sides. I'm just completely, but they have stadium designs that are much more conducive to that. But realistically, you can only compare it to what we had before. And it's a logarithmic improvement over what we had before. It's super, super cool. I think people on TV probably get used to it. I did watch some of the highlights back on TV and it did look kind of weird on TV and on YouTube watching the highlights back, but I think you get used to it and know what to expect. But it was super, super cool. It was very underwhelming, right? When we first did it, when we first
there's just like two lights
started to do it. Well, it was too light outside, but then also they were sort of dimming them just barely. And then it was like a second of it. And then it was done when I think they almost revealed them perfectly because they had that sort of reveal where it was like sort of dim. And I know, Bobby, you and I were looking at each other going, how many millions of dollars? Like, was this really that cool? They were certainly lighting up the playfield much, much better. It looked super, super cool. Inside the stadium was super cool because it was like dark on the upper decks. And it almost looked like a Thunder game or like an NBA game. Like a lot of the higher seats were pretty dark and the field was just perfectly lit. You had those crisp, which I love, such a weird thing, but those four-way shadows on the players, which I think look neat. But you can only compare it to what we had before, and it was a super cool approach. But then the way they revealed it, everyone was super underwhelmed. And then Drake Stoops had that touchdown that about halfway through the play, everyone was like, oh yeah, he's down. This is not going to be a touchdown. And then he extended it with just ridiculous performance by Drake Stoops why I got my game ball. And then when they went full out with the lights and then full on, and it was doing its complete dark and complete off with the fireworks, with the sparklers and everything, that was
it was
tremendous. The stadium went off.
It was awesome.
It was next level. Yeah. And then a little bit after, when we went to a TV timeout and everyone did the phone light thing, that was just the coolest thing. It was perfectly worked out. So I'm sure we will continue to develop the sort of the programming for the flashes, and there might be some arguments for TV, but I would assume that TV broadcasters, especially ESPN, already have this worked out, because Georgia and Alabama have been doing it for several years now. I think since 2019, maybe 18, but they've been doing it for a while, and ESPN has been doing their games. So certainly the broadcasters know what to do.
Yeah, for sure. They'll figure it out. Times change. People figure it out. So yeah, I like them. And I'm very excited to have the lights back for K-State. Kind of wild. I thought that was going to be big noon all the way, but I guess they gave it to Michigan and Maryland, so fine by me. But yeah, that's going to be a massive game. First top 25, potentially. If OU doesn't blow, OU probably won't drop out of the top 25 if they lose to Nebraska, knock on wood. And K-State probably will jump in there if they beat Tulane. Some things hold. Could be a pretty big game to kick off the Big 12 conference schedule. I'm sure campus will be hype. I know I'll be excited. So,
we are being blessed without our 11 a.m. kickoffs, because looking at the next week with TCU at TCU, I think Big Noon probably would go to OSU Baylor. You would just think that. We might get a nice little run here of avoiding some 11 a.m.s before Texas.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. So, a little later game for TCU would be cool. Sorry, Ty, you go ahead.
I was going to say I wouldn't mind. I know you guys, or Bobby, you at least will probably go to TCU or try. But if I'm watching on TV, it doesn't necessarily affect me as much. I would still prefer a later one, but I'm happy all day if we go evening kicks for all the at-home games, or most of the at-home games. And then if the away games happen to be 11s, then I'm fine with that too. So
they wouldn't have spent this much money if they wouldn't known that they are going to get a little in with the TV networks to push them away from 11 a.m.s.
Yeah. Yeah. The only big noon game I want is OU Baylor, for reasons that Jamison and I definitely understand.
Yes. Yes, of course.
We're hoping on that one. But anyways, guys, I think that's all we have for Kent State. And hey, if you're listening to this podcast, we're like, hey, you didn't talk about OU Nebraska at all. What the hell? Like, that's a little weird. We got an OU Nebraska mini episode coming out soon. So keep your eyes peeled out for that on your podcast feeds, as well as our YouTube feed. We'll make sure to let you know. That'll drop sometime down the wire. But that's all we got for Kent State. So, Jamison, Ty, I think we're pretty good to close up shop. What do y'all think? Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm excited to talk Nebraska.
Absolutely. Same here. All right. For me, Jamison, and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. Thank you so much for listening or watching. And thank you to our sponsors, DraftKings and Raycon, as well as our partners at TPPN. We will see you soon as we break down the OU Nebraska game. Can't wait. All right. Have a great week, everyone. Boomer Sooner out there. That doesn't make sense. Boomer Sooner.
This is a stellar pod of speaking on all of our parts.
I'm just leaving.